Okay, this will most likely be the last ever chapter I will record in this room, and that makes me a little bit sad. But we're gonna get through it and we're gonna do it. Okay, this is chapter 37 of The Night Singer. 37. From the moment Hannah first learned that Axel Stanton's fingerprints were on the knife, it had felt like she was on a downward slope. During the drive back to the station and while Melina was working on the CCTV footage, she had slipped further and further down. The rest of the team had come to Ove's office for a quick debrief, while Axel Stanston and Benjamin Carlstead were brought in for questioning. The technician was 32 and had been working for the Kalmar police for nearly 3 years. According to Ove, he had barely taken a day off sick and had done his job without any complaints from either him or his superiors. "Eric and Hannah, I want you to question Axel Stanston," said Ove. "No. Why not?" Hannah grappled for an answer. There was so much that felt like it was niggling away at her. The fact that she had told Rebecca that Axel wasn't on Oland when Joel died. How much she disliked him. But also plenty of other things that had nothing to do with the investigation. The knowledge that someone clearly didn't want her here. She couldn't find any good answer. "Okay, you take him instead," said Ove to Amir. "Hannah and Daniel can question Benjamin." "Wouldn't it be better if I did it?" Karina turned to look at Hannah as she spoke, almost like she was challenging her with her gaze. "No," said Ove. "Hannah has never met Benjamin. Have you had much contact with him, Daniel?" "Almost none," he replied. Karina was about to argue, but Ove received word that Benjamin was waiting for them in interview room 3. During the short walk down there, Hannah recognized yet another thing that was gnawing away at her: jealousy of Eric's family. The fact that he had a partner and child and parents-in-law, he clearly didn't mind coming to stay. Hannah had only met her grandmother and her brother, and barely even that. Granny's dementia was so severe that she no longer remembered who Hannah was, and Hannah had been to see her only once since she'd moved back to the island. She knew she should visit her again soon, but it was just so painful to see how little of her was left. As ever, when Hannah thought about her grandmother, her hand sought out the tattoo on her arm. She had tried to repair the relationship with her brother. That was why she had gone to London when Ella was 1, but it was as though Christopher didn't want it. As though all he could see in her was their father. Strictly speaking, she also had another set of grandparents on her father's side, but she hadn't seen them in around 15 years. They hadn't even come to the funeral. That was how they had always dealt with problems on that side of the family, by trying to smother them with silence. When the problems eventually grew so large they could no longer be ignored, she ran away. Her father's parents now lived in Norway. Granny hadn't been that way at all. She had kept Hannah's mother alive through her stories, and she had forced Hannah to talk about her father. She had tried to do the same with Christopher, but she had never managed to get through to him. Hannah couldn't interrogate Axel, because no matter how much she wanted to deny it, he was the link to Christopher, to everything that had happened. "You okay?" asked Daniel. Hannah felt his presence like a source of heat by her side, some place she could draw energy from if she would just open herself up to the possibility, though she doubted she would ever dare. "I'm just tired," she said. "You sure?" Hannah nodded. She wondered how much Daniel knew about her father. It was a given that Karina must have told them who he was, but all she could feel radiating from him was kindness, none of Eric's intrusive curiosity. Kindness and eyes that dragged her right back to Fabian. Daniel opened the door to the interview room, and Benjamin Carlstead looked up at them. "Why do you want to talk to me?" he asked. His gray shirt had already turned dark beneath his arms. Hannah felt herself slide even further down the slope. She was worried about what this could mean for Rebecca, for her. They sat down, and once Daniel had started the tape recorder and gone through the formalities, he got straight to the point. "You found the CCTV camera on the street outside Axel Stanton's office, and you went to collect the footage from Securitas." "Yes." Benjamin ran a hand through his dark hair. It was as though he had just come across himself doing something inappropriate, because he then placed both hands on the table in front of him and stared down at them. "When did Axel Stanston leave his office?" "I don't remember the exact time." "Roughly then." "Around 2 o'clock. The minute the words left Benjamin's lips, Hannah knew he was the one who had tampered with the video. Except that's not quite right, is it? Said Daniel. He left the office at 11:15. Why did you change the timestamp? I didn't, said Benjamin. He glared down at his hands as though they had acted without his knowledge. You gave us the wrong time, Hannah said calmly, but the video you got from Securitas had the correct timestamp on it. So far, that's the only evidence we've got that you manipulated it. But it's only a matter of time, as you know. Help us now by not wasting any more time. This is a murder investigation. Benjamin looked up to the door behind them. Hannah decided to try a different approach. How do you know Axel Stanston? She asked. Through my wife. What's her name? Hannah was struck by a sudden fear that it would be someone from her past. But Benjamin was only 32 and his wife was probably even younger. Yalva Karstedt. Hannah had never hung out with anyone called Yalva. Her company hired Axel's and the cost spiraled out of control. She hasn't managed to pay off the debt yet. Benjamin's eyes darted from one of them to another. The man clearly felt conflicted. He both wanted and didn't want to confess. Who suggested that you keep an eye on any investigations where Axel Stanston's name popped up? No, that's not what happened, said Benjamin. So what did happen? Asked Hannah. We never talked about it, but when I saw Axel on that video, I thought maybe I could use it to write off Yalva's debt. How much did she owe? Asked Daniel. $70,000, Benjamin said. We don't have much money. We want to start a family, but the treatment costs so much. Bringing up their longing for children was clearly an attempt to garner sympathy, but it didn't change a thing for Hannah, though she did feel sorry for his wife, who would also suffer. And you didn't stop to think that maybe you would be helping a murderer? Daniel continued. No, people like Axel always get away with things, so I felt like it didn't make much difference. You're a police officer. I know, but I really don't think it was him. Benjamin was trying to shrug off all responsibility, but his pained face suggested it wasn't working. Did you talk about Joel? Hannah asked. No, said Benjamin. I honestly didn't want to. How'd you change the timestamp on the video? Asked Daniel. Benjamin explained the process, then Daniel ended the interview. So what happens now? Asked Benjamin. I don't know, said Hannah. That's up to Ove and the prosecutor. Can I call my wife? Not yet. Hannah and Daniel left Benjamin in the interview room and asked one of their colleagues outside to keep an eye on him. They couldn't take any risks with someone who might want to hurt themselves or others. The cyclist the German couple passed was blonde and in his 30s, said Daniel. Could be Axel Stanston? Maybe, said Hannah. She was dubious for many reasons. Joel had been dead for several hours by the time he was found, and she also struggled to imagine Axel on a bike. Still, he could have had some reason to come back without his car. I'll get in touch with the Germans to check, Daniel told her. Hannah nodded and walked toward the video room next to the one where Axel Stanston was still being interviewed. She needed to see him, to see the man who had, in all likelihood, killed his own son. The last day. Joel keeps an ear out behind him the whole time. He can't handle any more of a beating. It doesn't sound like Fanny is following him. She is the only one he's really afraid of. He finally understands just how dangerous she is. When Joel reaches the road, he turns north and slowly makes his way home. He wonders why he didn't bring his bike. Not that he is sure he would be able to ride it in this state. He doesn't have the energy to light the road up ahead of him with his phone, but he is moving so slowly that he can find his way without it. The moon is still out and the porch lights are shining on some of the houses, yet the darkness seems so compact that nothing can really touch it. God, he hates the dark. When he was younger, he was convinced there were monsters in the jet black gap between his bed and the wall. Monsters don't exist, Mom had comforted him, except they do. F-slur. That was what Fanny and her gang of hangers-on had called him throughout primary and middle school, but the hatred in her voice had been stronger this time. Maybe that was what her anger was really about, more than the money and the fact that he had shoved her away from Molly. Fortunately, the nickname hadn't followed him to high school. Some of his classmates there are the same, but a lot of them are new. Yes, Joel likes boys, but he has never got any further than kissing. His heart flutters when he remembers Seb's warm lips and cautious smile in Nadine's kitchen. She had invited Seb to her birthday party purely because she thought Joel would like him, and he had, but it never came to anything more than their kiss that evening and a coffee at Fiesta. Maybe Seb could feel Joel's insecurity. There is so much he just doesn't understand. How can you love someone when you don't even know who you are? The pain muddles his thoughts. His side is the worst, and Joel is convinced something must be broken. There's another kind of pain there, too. What has Lena done? He doesn't think Fanny was lying about the drugs. She doesn't know that he let Lena try it after all. But why did Lena let him know how desperate she was for more? Why did she go straight to Fanny? Funny, lovely Lena. The money thing must have been a lie. Lena can't have said he would pay. Joel replays in his mind everything that had happened in the woods, the punches, the kicks, the way he curled up like a terrified baby, how he flipped out, everything he should have said to Fanny, that she's a loser who picks on little kids, that he will never give in. He gingerly reaches up and touches his brow. It's sticky, but it doesn't seem to be bleeding anymore. How is he going to explain this to Mom? Tell her that he strolled out through the front door in his sleep and fell over in the driveway. He used to sleepwalk when he was younger, but it must be at least 5 years now since he last done it. That time he thought he was in the bathroom and ended up peeing all over an armchair. Joel reaches Guardby Church and sits down in the bus shelter. He needs to rest, and he wants to check just how bad it is. He notices that his jeans are muddy and that he has a hole in one knee, the jeans Petrie gave him for Christmas. Do you think we're made of money? He can practically hear the disappointment in Mom's voice. Petrie probably won't say a thing. Joel takes out his phone and realizes that the screen is cracked. Damn it, not that too. Mom will never agree to fork out for a new phone. He eventually manages to get it working and holds the camera up to his face, but the light is too poor. He takes a picture with the flash instead, studies the image. His face looks terrible. He'll have to wash when he gets home, and in the morning he'll have to steal some of Mom's makeup to cover the worst of it. The blood and dirt will rinse off, but he is certain he'll have a real shiner around his left eye. His lip has swollen to twice its usual size, and no amount of makeup will be able to cover that. Cooling it with ice might help. As Joel shoves his phone into his pocket, he almost cuts himself on the knife. He should put it back in its sheath, but he just doesn't have the energy. Instead, he tips his head back against the wall of the bus shelter and closes his eyes. The air around him suddenly seems full of noises. When Mom finally managed to convince him there were no monsters under his bed, he became afraid of ghosts instead, and there are now just a few small buildings between him and the graveyard. There has been a church here for over 1,000 years. How many people must have been buried during that time? The chill he can feel on his skin is them whispering. Joel wants to get up and go away from the dead, but then he hears the low hum of an engine and decides it will be safer to stay put if it's Fanny. He sits still, breathing as quietly as he can. The hum quickly grows in volume. Why is it so loud?